Thank you, Jerry, and good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Baldrige Foundation's quarterly webinar. Today's topic is the Baldrige Performance Excellence Program update, something that we have all eagerly awaited. As a reminder, due to the high number of participants, everyone will be kept on mute during the presentations. If you have questions, please submit them to the moderator in the Q&A box located on your control screen. Presenters will answer questions during our panel discussion. Before we get started today, I want to take a moment and recognize all of our great sponsors and a special thanks to members of the Mac Baldrige Society who serve as trustees of the Foundation's Institute for Performance Excellence. And here's today's agenda. Our key guest is Bob Fangmeyer, the director of the Baldrige Performance Excellence Program. He's going to be followed by Brian Lassiter, the chair for the Alliance for Performance Excellence, who will also brief Communities of Excellence 2026 for Stephanie Norling. After they're finished, we're going to have some more questions from the audience and then a few closing comments. So Bob, I'm now going to turn it over to you to help get us started.
All right, thank you, Al. Afternoon, everybody, or morning for some. I really appreciate being given the opportunity to share important information with so many members of the Baldrige community and others who are passionate about excellence. So my outline for today is to start with a little bit of background, briefly touching on the recent external review and the key recommendations that came out of that review. Then at a high level, go over our plan to address those recommendations. And then finally, take a deeper dive into the changes that impact the award process. Now, I want to tell you up front that there are many details yet to be fleshed out, but I know there is great interest, and I want to share as much as I can at this time. Of course, as Al mentioned, we'll finish up with some questions and answers. So let's get going. Next slide, please. So whenever we have really big decisions to make, I believe it's essential that we ground ourselves in our purpose and our mission. And for 36 years, the purpose and mission of the Baldrige program has been to improve the performance and long-term success of businesses and other organizations by recognizing role models with the Baldrige Award and by fostering the adoption of proven leadership, management, and operational practices. Of course, the leadership, management, and operational practices that are needed to ensure long-term success have evolved significantly in that time in order to address the ever-changing needs, expectations, and challenges that businesses and other organizations face. Therefore, the specifics of what we, the Baldrige program, offer and how we accomplish these things have also evolved over that time. But ultimately, this is what we do and why we do it. Now, those of you who've been involved with the Baldrige program for some time know that we regularly review and improve all of our core offerings, including the Baldrige framework and criteria for performance excellence, derivative tools such as the Excellence Builder and the Cybersecurity Excellence Builder, the award evaluation process and examiner training, and our educational offerings such as Quest for Excellence and the Baldrige Executive Fellows Program. We're not afraid of change. We embrace continuous improvement and we seek opportunities for innovation. And a great way to stimulate innovation is to get an independent external perspective. And that's just what we did. Next slide, please. Many of you have probably heard about our recent external review and may have even participated in parts of it. A couple of important things to understand are, one, we welcomed it. And two, it was a very robust effort. It incorporated input and perspectives from all of our key stakeholder groups, including, importantly, potential customers and former customers. It's also worth noting that this review was very collaborative in nature. We worked very closely with the contractor, Rios Partners, as well as with NIST and the Department of Commerce to ensure they understood Baldrige and the importance of our community, our volunteers, and our key partners. To ensure that the review was sufficiently robust, that they asked the right kinds of questions from the right kinds of people, and that it built on years of insights and input from our customers and stakeholders, as well as a very similar review effort that was performed by the Baldrige judges and overseers, which we chartered in December of 2021. Finally, since the external review was paid for by NIST and chartered, as it were, by the Department of Commerce, it has provided the opportunity to engage NIST and DOC in the effort, obtain their buy-in, their support, and to some extent, their ownership of the future of the program. Next slide. So at a high level, what Rios told us was that if we wanted greater participation in all things Baldrige, we need to address the 4 big buckets on this slide. And the first is relevancy. While striving to achieve and perhaps be recognized as a role model of excellence is adopted by some forward-thinking, enlightened leaders, including many of you, it's not something that most leaders think, aha, that's it, that's what we need to do, especially if they're struggling to deal with serious challenges that could affect their very survival, which honestly is probably 75 to 80% of every business out there, probably the same number of nonprofits. And right now in healthcare, it's probably 90 to 95%. Of course, those of us who are very familiar with Baldrige could justifiably say, wait a minute, that's exactly what you need to do. Unfortunately, that's proven to be a tough sell. Striving for excellence, right or wrong, is not seen as a critical need. So for the program and the larger Baldrige enterprise to significantly increase our reach and impact and to achieve our potential, it must be readily apparent why Baldrige matters to them being businesses and other organizations, them being NIST, the Department of Commerce, White House, and Congress. It has to be obvious, and it has to be simple to convey. Second, transform the award. Of course, relevancy is critical for increasing participation in the award, but so is ensuring that the value the organization receives far exceeds the time, effort, and money it costs to participate. And when you think about it, value from the award recognition itself, being named a Baldrige Award recipient, is largely from the impact it has on that organization's brand recognition and brand perception. But a part of that is being able to verifiably state that your organization has been held up as a national role model by the Department of Commerce and the White House, and that your organization is helping to improve thousands of other organizations and entire communities through the sharing of your best practices. Of course, it helps our brand to have broad industry and sector representation in the award and at the podium and sharing their best practices. And that includes well-known industry-leading organizations. It would also help to have the president hand out the awards. While these last 2 factors are very closely related and can honestly present a bit of a chicken or the egg challenge, which comes first, the president or the well-known industry-leading organizations, we do believe that we can accomplish both. Third, simplify and enhance accessibility of all of our offerings. It's not just the award process that has some barriers to participation or use. And many of our offerings would benefit from simplification, from improving the ease of accessibility, and from better leveraging technology in the delivery and the use of those offerings. And finally, strengthening partnerships. We have the opportunity to enhance the alignment, integration, the robustness, and effectiveness of the Baldrige enterprise, meaning the Baldrige Program and our core partners, the Baldrige Foundation, the Alliance for Performance Excellence, Communities of Excellence 2026, and ASQ, but also to strengthen our larger ecosystem by strategically incorporating new partners and collaborators to help all of us enhance our efficiency, effectiveness, reach, and impact. But really for today, the focus is on the first 2 big buckets. Next slide. So when we talk about better aligning our strategy and our value proposition with national priorities, what makes sense? What would we be looking for? Well, as noted, it has to be something that is readily seen as a need by leaders, organizations, congressional representatives, and administrations of all kinds. It must be something that isn't going to fade away anytime soon and isn't already well understood and addressed by other programs or other recognition awards. And as mentioned at the beginning, it has to cleanly fit within our purpose and our mission, and it should build on our legacy and enhance our existing body of knowledge and offerings, not undermine or replace them. It should be something that stimulates interest, creates new opportunities, and brings new energy to the program, to the award, and to the entire Baldrige enterprise. And very practically speaking, it should somehow support NIST and DOC missions, programs, and priorities. And quite honestly, I think we've identified something that absolutely nails these characteristics. Please advance the slide. Enhancing resilience and long-term success. Whether they're technological, geopolitical, innovations and other market changes, climate changes, or supply chain failures, the increasing frequency of regional, national, and global disruptions puts the health, the education, and the economic vitality of communities across the nation at risk, impacting our economy and national security. And what our nation needs are organizations that can achieve and sustain high performance over time through various disruptions. Remember, our purpose is to improve the performance and long-term success of businesses and other organizations. It's what we've been doing for the past 36 years, and this, I think, fits perfectly. So let's talk a little bit more about resilience. Next slide. While there isn't a formal consensus definition of resilience, most people would probably say that resilience means being able to bounce back following some kind of disruption. The problem with that definition is that it assumes that such disruptions are few and far between, and that bouncing back to a prior state is sufficient to ensure your survival and success. But in today's world, neither of those things are true. And the Baldrige Excellence Framework has been emphasizing and fostering agility and resilience for quite some time for that very reason. And business and academic literature has started to reflect this as well. With all of that in mind, we're positioning resilience as being ready and able to adapt, innovate, and thrive in an ever-changing dynamic environment. We think that helps address the initial concern and also to make it clear why Baldrige matters and what it can do for individual organizations, for our communities, and for the nation as a whole. And I personally believe it will resonate very well with just about every leader out there. Now, when you look at the research that has been done and is being done around resilience, and when you look at the characteristics of organizations that demonstrate excellence, you find some common indicators. Resilient organizations generally demonstrate strength in the areas that are shown. And what may be surprising to some is how well this aligns to the results category of the Baldrige criteria for performance excellence. Would you advance the slide, please? So this really validates what we have seen in and heard from our award recipients. Resilience and long-term success are the outcomes of striving for excellence, or at least some of the outcomes. The work organizations have been doing to leverage the Baldrige framework has been and will continue to be helpful to their efforts to improve and achieve role model performance. So, in all, refocusing the program on resilience and long-term success makes a lot of sense. It checks all the boxes and is largely about repositioning. That said, I don't want you to think that the changes to the award process that we're mentioning are anything but transformational. Next slide. So at a high level, these are the things that we said we would do to make the award process more relevant, more accessible, more appealing, more valuable, and ultimately more impactful. As mentioned, we're talking about recognizing role models of resilience and long-term success. What is important to understand, though, is that these organizations are still role models of excellence, but just seen through the lens of resilience and long-term success. Something that's not obvious here, but a critical component of the change, is to keep the main thing the main thing. In other words, focus the award process on identifying role models, which is the purpose of the award, and focus the framework and other educational offerings on learning and improvement. For decades, we've conflated those two purposes in the award process to great benefit for those who have used the award process as a means to receive a holistic organization-wide assessment of their maturity while also competing for the award. However, over time, as the framework and the criteria have evolved and expanded in scope, it has become increasingly challenging to have an efficient and effective process that could serve both of those functions well. Second, we want to enhance and expand recognition opportunities to create more potential value for organizations that participate, starting with formally recognizing site-visited organizations as finalists for the award, as long as they're willing to be identified. It's good for them and it's good for us. Second, we also plan to provide what we're calling special recognition to Baldrige Award finalists, those site-visited organizations, and award recipients for having significant impact in areas of importance to that organization, to their key stakeholders, and to our nation. Recognitions, for example, could be highlighting an organization's efforts to improve the overall well-being of their workforce, or strengthen the resilience of their supply chain, or perhaps something that extends outside of their operations, such as enhancing the economic vitality, health, education, or well-being of underserved populations. This will not be a separate process. Rather, it will be incorporated into the award evaluation. And we recognize that the list of potential things to be recognized for is nearly limitless. But we'll create some standardized options while also allowing for examiners and judges to identify something unique for a given organization. Each organization that earns something may have 2 or 3 of these. We won't be handing out 10 or 12 special recognitions per organization. Third, we want to lower or eliminate the barriers to participation by simplifying the award criteria, minimizing application requirements, and streamlining the evaluation process. Focusing the award process on award worthiness permits the kind of simplification and streamlining that previously would not have been possible. We'll come back and dive into this deeper in a couple of minutes. Fourth, we want to create a fast track that leverages existing industry recognitions as a pre-screen. Really, it's a pre-screen process that results in a fast track. But the big idea here is that there are certain ratings, rankings, and awards out there that recognize an organization's performance. Some of them, though not many, are rigorous enough, objective enough, and sufficiently aligned to Baldrige that we can have confidence that such recognition should be given partial credit in the Baldrige process. So we will advance pre-screened organizations directly to site visit, where the team will need to verify performance, explore related processes, and assess role model characteristics, just as they will for Baldrige applicant organizations. To date, we've identified 2 such pre-screens that we have confidence in. We have looked for others, particularly in healthcare and education, but haven't yet found any with sufficient breadth, depth, and rigor. If you have some you think we should explore, please let us know. We will be considering others going forward. Fifth, we plan to target, do an initial vetting, and proactively recruit certain pre-screened organizations, preferably industry-leading organizations. And we feel that the combination of the changes above, along with a well-coordinated, personalized outreach campaign for each targeted organization that'll leverage all available connections through our stakeholder networks, gives us a much better chance to engage these types of organizations in the award process itself. Advance the slide, please. So I mentioned we take a deeper dive into number 3, so that's what we're going to do. Let's go. Next slide, please. As we started redesigning a streamlined award process, we identified some key requirements, things that we think are essential. First, we want to make it easy for an organization to participate. Notice I said participate. I'm not talking about winning the award. Role model performance will never be easy to achieve. It shouldn't be. If it were, it wouldn't be role model, right? You'd be average. But participation in the award process itself should be easy, or relatively easy at least. Second, we want to ensure appropriate rigor and process integrity. We've got a critical balancing act here, right? While we want and need to streamline and simplify, we also need to be sure that the integrity and the efficacy of the award processes are preserved. We cannot start putting undeserving organizations on the podium. Third, we want to evaluate only what is essential to determine role model worthiness. And this is perhaps the key to finding the right balance I just mentioned. What exactly does an organization need to demonstrate in order to be considered a role model? Next, we want to minimize the application requirements. This is part of how we streamline and make it easier for organizations to participate. We know that poor results will keep an organization off the podium, regardless of how strong their processes look. So let's start our process by evaluating their results. If they do well enough, they move on to a site visit phase, and the examiner team will need to verify performance, explore related processes, and assess role model characteristics, as I mentioned before. This radically simplifies the application itself by asking only for results, and really reduces the time and effort needed by applicants to prepare and examiners to evaluate that application. Also, with the evaluation process focused on determining role model status, we need a rubric that can distinguish that. It doesn't need to distinguish every possible level of maturity and how an organization can move up that maturity scale. That said, as you see, it's TBD exactly what that looks like. But we do plan to retain the evaluation factors that most of you probably are familiar with: levels, trends, comparisons, and integration for results, and approach deployment, learning, and integration for processes. Let's see an Adley. We also plan to establish standard work processes, worksheets, tools that'll be used by examiners to increase consistency and simplify their work overall. One of our objectives for these changes that's not listed here explicitly is the desire to drive out any unnecessary subjectivity or judgment in the process. Of course, a certain amount is going to be needed. We all know that. But standard work products should help us remove unnecessary subjectivity. And finally, this is perhaps all for naught if we don't significantly reduce the effort and the cycle times. Next slide. Okay, so what are the next steps? Well, we have 8 separate project teams that are working various aspects of our proposed changes. They include some external stakeholders, but with such a broad set of stakeholder groups, we cannot field an agile and effective project team that represents all of our stakeholder groups. So we are incorporating various stakeholders at various points in the design and development process. There are a lot of details yet to be ironed out, as I said at the very beginning. So there are still many opportunities for people to engage. We're planning to do an official launch that will be a well-coordinated multimodal campaign, and we will be leveraging as many different channels and partners as possible. The timing of that is not definitive yet because we still need to work out a few more details before any broad public announcement. Next slide. Now, I'm sure that some of you who have spent many years or even decades like me participating in the previous award process are feeling a little bit overwhelmed at the moment, like me. But seriously, as I said at the Quest conference in April, in the context of speaking about the future of Baldrige, change, and more often transformational change, is becoming a regular part of success. We cannot run from it. Rather, we must be prepared for it, run into it, and find or create valuable opportunities from it. Or more succinctly, we must be ready and able to adapt, innovate, and thrive in an ever-changing, dynamic environment. And with that, I'm finished, and I welcome your questions.
Of which there are a number of.
I will do my best.
Well, I'm going to give you the first one here, Bob. It kind of sounds like Baldrige is trying to get back to focusing on big business. Is that the intent?
So yes, we do want to focus on big business, but that does not mean we will be focused only on big business. We want to be able to enhance our engagement with big business, small business, all business, as well as all other types of organizations. The changes we are making are intended to make the program and the award more appealing and valuable for all kinds of organizations. And in fact, if you were reading carefully in one of my earlier slides where it talked about some of the recommendations, you may have noticed that one of the recommendations was to only focus on one or two sectors. That recommendation was not acceptable for a variety of reasons, and I was able to get NIST and the department to agree with me.
Okay. The next question is, can you tell us when the new award application will be available and when the applications will be due?
So, yeah, as mentioned, there are a lot of changes that are still in process, right? So it's a little bit premature. We need some of those details to be worked out before we can lay out the entire evaluation process cycle. A reminder for those who might not really be thinking about it all. That includes the application, so its availability, its due date, but also examiner recruitment and training, the application review period, the site visit review period, the judging process. Those things have to be looked at together because it's a system that we have to manage, right? And so we need to look at that whole thing. So I can't tell you right now exactly what that timing is. What I can tell you is that we will have an award process in 2024, and then we're aiming to have the online application ready for use in January. That doesn't mean it'll be opening in January, okay? I want to make that clear. It does not mean it'll be opening in January to accept applications. What I'm trying to do is convey that we are moving as quickly as we can to stand up the revised process, and it will occur in 2024. Hopefully early in 2024 is when it'll kick off.
Okay. The next one centers around the feedback report. And when you talked about a streamlined process, award process to focus on identifying role models, does that mean that those organizations will or will not receive a feedback report? And if they do, what will it look like?
So it does not mean they will not receive a feedback report. They will receive a feedback report. But again, as I said before, there are still many details that haven't been finalized. But what I can say is that it will be different than the feedback reports of the past. With the evaluation focused on whether the organization demonstrates sufficient strength of results and maturity of processes to be a national role model, and the feedback provided, therefore, will focus on where they meet that level of performance and where they do not meet that level of performance and why. It will not be focused on identifying exactly where the organization is across the full spectrum of possible maturity levels as it is today or has been in the past, and also how to advance to the next level of maturity. That type of evaluation will still be valuable, of course, and it'll be offered in some way, but that's not the purpose of the award process. We need to keep the main thing, and use the award process as a means to identify those national role models.
Okay. The next one is, I saw the message from the NIST Director, Undersecretary of Commerce on your website about DOC's approval of your proposed changes and her apparent excitement for the coming changes. Do you expect more engagement and support from the Department of Commerce going forward?
Thanks. That's a great question. And this one is a yes, but, and I'll start with the yes. Yes, we expect more engagement and support from the department going forward. In fact, when I presented our proposal to the Deputy Secretary, I made it clear that we would need more engagement and support going forward. And I see that support coming in a number of ways: help with outreach, communication, promotion, and participation in various activities, events to start with. The but here that I have to say, and it's something that I've said many times before, while certain things certainly didn't go the way we may have wanted, this administration in the department has been more interested, engaged, and even more supportive of Baldrige in some ways than any other I've worked with as director. We've been actively recruited into a number of strategic initiatives that have come out of the Office of Secretary or the Deputy Secretary, and we're being highlighted by the department in that context. So it's a definite yes. We want more, we need more, we expect more, but I don't want to downplay the support that we have had.
Okay. We've got a lot of questions here, and I'll mention this later, but I'll mention it now just in case some people don't have a chance to stay on. If we don't get to your question, we're going to submit all the questions to Bob, and Bob will get back to you after the webinar in an email, in the form of an email. But here's the next one that we have time for right now. Bob, have you considered how these changes will, and a lot of questions centered around this in one way or another, how these changes are going to impact Alliance programs and what will happen to their award process? And in combining a few of these questions here, will you still need to win a state's highest award to be able to apply for the national award? Will that construct still be in place?
All right. Another great question. I know there's a lot of interest here. Have we considered how the changes will affect the Alliance programs? Absolutely. And not just the Alliance programs, but all of our key stakeholders, including the Foundation, Communities of Excellence, ASQ, Baldrige Consultants, etc. We've been considering the impact that changes, even potential changes, would have. We've included all of our stakeholders from the very beginning of this process, all the way back to the beginning of the external review. So we've been wanting to make sure that all the voices are heard, that concerns and inputs and perspectives are incorporated into this process all the way through. But certainly the specific changes that we are making will have an impact across the Baldrige enterprise. And I'm sure it will create some challenges, but please recognize it also creates lots of opportunity. The other thing I want to remind you of is that we've been talking about largely here today just the changes to the award process. But don't forget, there's two other big buckets. And changes that are coming in those areas will also impact and benefit the larger enterprise. So just want to say that as sort of contextual on those. So specific to the Alliance and their award processes. So certainly we've considered it. We've put a lot of thought into it. I've had a couple of brief conversations with Brian and Margot about the need to figure out the most appropriate way to cascade these changes through the Alliance or not, right? Maybe some don't cascade. Maybe they cascade in different ways or partially. There is a lot that needs to be explored in that space. But we also want to make sure that we have an appropriate pipeline pathway from the Alliance programs to the National Award, which someone was getting at with that latter question. One thing that I think is important to recognize is that, generally speaking, I know this isn't universal, but generally speaking, Alliance programs are serving organizations that are striving to improve their performance, to earn recognition as they progress along their improvement journey, and hopefully, ultimately, achieve the levels of performance necessary so they can actually compete for the national award, the Baldrige Award. None of that changes. Alliance programs still will continue to play a critical role in helping organizations get to that level of performance. And one other thing that I think is important to remind folks of is that as we welcome leaders from those well-known industry-leading organizations to the podium, it'll have an immediate impact on the entire enterprise. It'll drive greater interest in Baldrige, in the award process, and therefore in participation with the Alliance programs as well. So in short, there's a lot to figure out still. I recognize that. We recognize the need to work with the Alliance to figure that out. We are not going to try and do that on our own. And in terms of that pipeline, how that works exactly, I think there are some questions in there still, in the sense that if our award process is changing significantly, is there a break, at least maybe for a short period of time, in terms of how that pipeline works, right? Because if what we're evaluating is somewhat different from the Alliance, maybe that doesn't make sense initially. But we'll figure that out, I promise. The intent here is to, as I said before, increase opportunity for all. This is not about trying to undercut anybody's sort of role in the award process or other aspects of our shared sort of business model.
Okay. The next one here centers around the framework, and it says, you mentioned that the framework at the beginning of the presentation. What changes do you expect to the framework, and what is the relationship now going to be between the framework and the new streamlined award criteria?
Yeah, it's another good question, and it's come up in other contexts. So, yeah, I mentioned at the beginning again that the intent really is to sort of separate the award evaluation process and recognizing role models from that organizational improvement and learning purpose of the framework and our other educational offerings. But that's not to say that the award criteria is divorced from the framework in some way. Everything in the framework is important to an organization that is striving to achieve excellence, at least to some degree. We know there's relative importance involved here. But not everything in the framework needs to be evaluated in the award process that is focused on just determining whether they have what is essential to be a role model, right? So there's a difference now between the two. It's not one and the same. And so the framework will continue to serve as sort of that foundation of the award and all of our other offerings. It'll probably get some tweaks to its content to ensure that it incorporates learnings that we've had as we've gone through this exploration of resilience and looking at excellence sort of through the lens of resilience and long-term success, and also as we go through the revised award process and learning perhaps new and different things from our community and from others as we expand our horizons and engage a broader spectrum of organizations. So I think there'll be tweaks to the framework from that perspective. And because it's no longer going to be the sort of source of the evaluation for the award, we can reorganize the content, streamline some of the content that's in there in order to make sure that the framework is most effective for its intended purpose, which is not going to be evaluation for the award going forward. So there's that. So it's kind of, I'll call it more of a makeover for the framework, but there'll certainly be an ongoing connection between the award criteria and the content of the framework itself.
Okay. The next one, there are a number of questions about the criteria itself and the examiner training. So I'm going to try and combine these, Bob. Can you explain, is the current criteria going to stay in place, the 23-24 criteria as it is? Will it change any? And will it still be used by the program? And then how will that impact examiner training? And when will the next round of examiner training take place to prepare for this new award process?
Yeah, I'll start at the very end of that one because I think I might have already answered that. We haven't been able to lay out the sort of timeline for the system that we have to lay out, so I can't answer exactly when that's going to happen. It will happen, though. We will need examiners. There's no question. The process will be different. The award criteria will be different. So yes, we will need to have a period of time where we recruit and train examiners prior to the evaluation process. Now, in terms of the criteria themselves, will it be the same? I think the question was basically, and I'm going to reframe it a little bit. I think the question really was, will the criteria for performance excellence that is currently in the Baldrige framework be used for the award evaluation. I think that's basically what the question was asking. And the answer to that is no. But as I said a moment ago, there are certainly many components of the criteria for performance excellence that is in the framework that will be pulled over and will be used as the criteria for the award. The idea is to make sure that we have identified sort of the minimum set of criteria that's needed to determine if an organization is worthy of being held up as a role model, right? A role model of resilience and long-term success. I showed you the slide earlier where we had sort of that mapping of the characteristics of resilience and the Baldrige Award criteria results categories, right? You could see the parallels there. And so there are absolutely going to be aspects, components, concepts, questions from the criteria for performance excellence that are in the award criteria. This first year, at least, we are integrating things we're learning from research we've been doing and input we've been getting related to resilience and long-term success that may go beyond what is currently in the framework. But as I mentioned just a few minutes ago, we expect that we'll get some learnings from that. And some of those things may work their way into the next iteration of the framework. Did I hit all the points, Al? Was there another piece to that question?
No, I think you pretty much covered it.
Okay.
There's a number of questions here that I'm trying to combine, but basically it's if our organization won a state-based program's highest award this year or last year, Bob, are they still going to be held to that 5-year timeline to be able to apply nationally, or is that going to be put on hold temporarily as we work through this new process?
Yeah, there's no formal decision made, but my intention is to not cause any sort of harm to an organization because of this delay and stuff, right? That would be inappropriate completely. So what that really means and how that plays out hasn't yet been determined, but part of the discussion we have with Brian and company. But my intent is that the organizations would not suffer any kind of detriment because we've been on hold.
Okay. Trying to combine some more here. Here's a good one. As an example, for healthcare organizations and recognitions for potential fast track, will AHCA, Gold Award, Magnet Nursing Awards, those types of awards, will they be factored into determining an organization's ability to apply on the fast track?
Yeah, so that's another really good question. So we looked a little bit into Magnet. The concern we had with Magnet was that it was relatively narrowly focused, right, around nursing and stuff. And that's obviously very critical and important, but it doesn't necessarily hit the breadth of results and things that we would want to see or be able to be assured of to fast track the organization all the way to site visit. In the future, and I mentioned this back in my slides, that we'll be considering other types of pre-screens. There's a potential that we could do something that would add a whole lot of complexity, and why we're not going to do it right off the bat here. But there's the possibility we could do something like a partial pre-screen, meaning if you get a Magnet thing, you might not have to respond to certain questions that relate to what Magnet covers, right? So we will explore that in the future. But yeah, the challenge that we've had with identifying these pre-screens is the need for them to be very broad, very robust, very deep, but also aligned to sort of all the things that we need to be exploring as a part of our application process, because they're sort of jumping over that part, right? So we have the confidence that that pre-screen is effective in what we would need it to do. Regarding ACA and all the other alliance programs, we've talked about this a little bit, and obviously a Baldrige-based evaluation process couldn't be more aligned to Baldrige, right? So we think that is a potential, but we need it goes back to my earlier comment. We've got to figure out what that pipeline looks like with the alliance. I think we can get there. I'm not sure we could just automatically say, any alliance program's top recipient is automatically fast tracked. We have to have conversations around that and make sure that we're all comfortable and confident with that.
Okay, we've got time for one more here, and this is a good one because it talks about the newest sector of the Baldrige Awards communities, and so can you identify now how this will affect the pathway for communities to be able to apply for the Baldrige Award?
Pathway, interesting choice of words there. I don't know. Other than my expectation is it'll be similar to what happens at the organizational level, right? We have communities of excellence at this point, and I believe alliance programs that are doing evaluations of communities. As a member of the alliance, top recipients that come out of the top communities that come out of those would be eligible to apply, and all the rest of that, all those things would hold. But in terms of, the pathway, specifically the impact, I mean, communities will become a part of this somehow. I mean, community resilience is a critical part of what the nation needs, right? So it's still right in the proper sort of context of our purpose and our mission, et cetera. And in fact, one of the really interesting developments that we have had and learnings we've had is we found out that NIST has a community resilience program that's focused on sort of the infrastructure of a community. But the interesting thing is that they have learned through their research that community resilience is dependent upon organizational resilience. So they started to play around in the field of organizational resilience, just as we have really been playing in this area of community resilience, community performance, community excellence, but it is in essence community resilience. So I found that very interesting, and that alignment will be fruitful going forward. That synergy will be fruitful going forward. So communities will certainly be a part. It fits in perfectly, and we look forward to being able to make that happen as soon as we can.
Okay, well, Bob, I want to thank you for the update and answering all those questions that you did. As a reminder to everybody, if Bob didn't get to your question in particular, we're going to give him all the questions at the end of the webinar, and he'll get back with you individually via email or some other communication method. At this time, though, I want to turn it over to Brian Lassiter, the chair for the Alliance for Performance Excellence, give us an update on state-based programs. Brian?
Yeah, thank you, Al. And thanks, Bob, for the pretty thorough update. There's a ton of work that's happened, obviously, to get to this point. And, all change has risk that comes with it and some anxiety levels for all of us. But I think the opportunities are really exciting here for the program and for the whole Baldrige enterprise, including the Alliance and all of our members. I am Brian Lassiter, chair of the Alliance for Performance Excellence, and also have the privilege of leading one of those Alliance members, the Performance Excellence Network, that serves Minnesota, North and South Dakota. Just a real quick update here, and then I will give an update on behalf of Stephanie Norling on Communities of Excellence as well. Many of you know the Alliance is considered the front door to the whole Baldrige enterprise. It's been referenced here several times in the questions. We are aware a lot of organizations and communities start their journey to excellence. And in that regard, as the review is taking place over the last year and a half, we were really focused on getting our own house in order. And I'm pleased, I think the last update, I shared with you the new purpose statement and mission statement. It's much more robust, much more accurate to what we're trying to accomplish. We're now attempting to really inspire individuals, organizations, and communities across the U.S. and the world to learn, implement, and achieve performance excellence with our offerings. So we revised purpose and mission statement. We're now working on a new set of core values and evaluating the strength of our culture and so forth. From there, we'll move on to strategic challenges, strategic advantages, our customers and their requirements, the offerings that hang off of that. We're making a lot of progress on how we support Alliance members themselves and those that the Alliance members serve. We have been participating in the Baldrige Reimagined that Bob just shared. In fact, we have our own committee that we stood up at about the same time that Bob and his team were standing up design teams to work through what's next. So we'll be very involved in the design and the execution of how this new reimagined vision gets realized. Excited about that and grateful for that. And the biggest thing on this slide that I need to call your attention to, because it's right in front of us, is the Baldrige Fall Conference, this year called Inspire. It's a worldwide excellence gathering. We're really excited that it'll be hosted in person in Milwaukee, but also streaming worldwide. And so it'll be unique in that regard. So there's still time left. It's 3 weeks away. Do plan to check that out and come. Great learning, great networking, real good energy that comes out of that experience. I think we can go to the COE updates and give you a little bit of time for the foundation updates. Stephanie Norling was unable to be with us today, and she asked me to do a briefing on what's going on with COE 2026. I am on the board of COE, on the faculty, and a mentor for a couple of communities. So while I'm not as knowledgeable about everything that's going on with COE as Stephanie is, I'll highlight a couple of quick things. One is that there's a new framework for communities of excellence that is being revised and will be released here just in a couple of weeks. I think it's the most significant revision that's taken place certainly in the last several years. And after this revision, it'll get in sync with the national programs revision cycle every couple of years. This process, much like the national framework review, involved literally hundreds of people through webinars and focus groups, and there was an equity task force and several other conversations that took place. There's an expert reviewer team. Some, I think, pretty significant and meaningful change that'll come out of this revision. Streamlining the community profile. It enhances the whole DEI concept and inclusion throughout the framework. We've eliminated the word customer from the framework, replacing it with stakeholders, and which I think is a little more accurate. Suppliers is now removed from the framework, also focusing more on partners and collaborators and so forth, which is more accurate. So check it out. It'll be ready in a couple of weeks. If you're coming to the fall conference or to the COE conference in Milwaukee, there'll be copies available for a small charge. We're excited to bring that framework in line with the national changes as well. Hold on here a second. Yeah, if we move to that slide, yeah, there's a couple of other things coming up. The COE is considering or will launch a membership program for the communities themselves that are already involved with this effort, as well as supportive organizations and individuals that want to support the mission of COE. I know many of you have asked about something like that in the past, and now you have an opportunity to contribute to the mission of COE. And I think that's it for now. So check out Inspire both for the traditional Baldrige Fall Conference as well as the COE component. We'll hopefully see you all in a few weeks. With that, that's the update for both the Alliance and COE. Huh?
Thanks, Brian. I appreciate it. I'm just going to chime in on the fall conference coming up here, Inspire. If you haven't had the chance to go to the website and just look at the lineup of speakers that they have, and especially the keynotes, it is extremely impressive. And I think it's really a conference that you want to be there in person for. And I know I'm excited about it. I'm going to be there myself personally. The next thing I'd like to talk about real quick here from the foundation side of the house is the fact that I had recent meetings this week in Washington, D.C. with members of Congress and their staffs, and I could tell you that there is still a great deal of bipartisan support for the Baldrige Performance Excellence Program. Everybody's excited about the changes that are coming up and looking forward to, as they have all said, more award recipients coming out of the Baldrige program, national role models. And so they're very excited about that. And we're always excited to tell that story and the story of state-based programs and communities out there that are doing so much for America right now. The foundation, the Institute for Performance Excellence, I'll talk a little bit about that right now. We've got a number of brand new courses out there and more on the way. And 3 that we're showcasing this month that have been extremely popular are logistics and distribution management, operations management, and procurement and supply management. All 3 of those courses are certification programs run online at your own pace. So if you have an opportunity, you might want to pass that along to your colleagues out there and check them out. In addition to that, we're going to be running a healthcare CEO roundtable again in 2024 at the American College of Healthcare Executives Congress in Chicago in March, and we're very excited to collaborate with them again on that particular program. Lastly, I want to thank all of our sponsors and all of our donors out there who make programs like today's possible. As a reminder to everybody, this program will be available next week along with the slides on the Foundation and Institute's websites. So you can dial into them there and pass the links along to your colleagues if they missed today's program. And again, I want to thank everybody for participating today, and have a great day, and please be safe out there.